Ketanji Brown Jackson, a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, is President Biden's pick for Supreme Court nominee.
Ketanji Brown Jackson, who currently sits on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, was probably the top shortlister for President Biden's eventual Supreme Court nominee. She is a former clerk of the retiring Justice Stephen Breyer, and she has a pretty unique professional background in that she has history as a federal public defender. She worked on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and a lot of progressives really like her for that fact.
When you become a judge, you take an oath to look only at the law in deciding your cases.
Judge Jackson just recently was confirmed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. That means she just went through a Senate confirmation process. She was approved with 53 votes, including the votes of some Republican senators. And that's one reason that the White House thinks that she is a confirmable candidate.
The nomination comes after Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer announced his retirement.
As you well know, this is a complicated country.
Justice Breyer was the subject of a really unprecedented campaign to get him to retire while Democrats control the White House and have, this very close control of the Senate.
President Biden made it very clear since the start, since Justice Breyer's retirement, that he would seek outside input and suggestions from not only Democrats, but Republican senators. And he certainly held a lot of meetings, a lot of calls, reaching out directly to Republican senators.
And with Breyer's retirement, Biden is able to fulfill a significant campaign promise.
I'd be honored to appoint the first African-American woman to the court.
For context, of the 115 justices in the Supreme Court's history, only 7 have not been white men. The Republican Party has actually been pretty split and struggled to handle this issue of race when it comes to the Supreme Court.
The fact that he's willing to make a promise at the outset that it must be a black woman, I gotta say that's offensive.
The irony is that the Supreme Court is at the very same time hearing cases about this sort of affirmative racial discrimination.
So this is going to certainly be an issue and kind of this undercurrent theme throughout the confirmation process.
Even with some pushback, Biden has sought bipartisan backing for his Supreme Court nominee on Capitol Hill going into the confirmation process.
We'll now head to the point of this where the Senate will really step up its efforts to try to find out more about this candidate.
So technically, President Biden does not need bipartisan support for the eventual confirmation of a Supreme Court nominee, as long as all Democrats are on board and also, more importantly, healthy and in attendance.
This nomination is not going to shift the Supreme Court's 6-3 conservative to liberal majority. But what it does do is it makes sure that one of those 3 liberals is replaced by someone with similar instincts, someone with similar ideology.